Why don't you guys go talk to my friend? She's single too.
Your friend? No way. She's not my type at all.
Please, beautiful girl, we're here because of you, not your ugly friend.
It started the way most painful things start, quietly, disguised as something normal. Angela and Bianca had been friends since primary school. They grew up in the same neighborhood in Lagos, attended the same church in Surulere, wore matching Sunday dresses their mothers sewed from the same Ankara fabric. From the outside, they looked like sisters, the kind of friendship people pointed at and said, "See those two? Always together." But together did not mean equal, and Angela would spend the next 26 years of her life learning that bitter lesson. Bianca was beautiful in the way that stops a room, tall, smooth, dark skin that caught light like polished wood, full lips that curled into a smile men crossed the street for. When she walked into a space, something shifted. Conversations paused, heads turned. She made ordinary rooms feel like occasions. Angela was different. Not ugly. That word was too simple, too lazy for what people did to her. Angela was the kind of girl people looked past. Average height, full-figured, dark and quiet, with big watchful eyes that noticed everything even when everyone assumed she noticed nothing. She was the kind of woman who had to work 3 times as hard to be seen in any room Bianca walked into. And Bianca knew it. That was the part Angela refused to admit for years, that Bianca knew, and not only knew, but arranged things that way. Little invisible arrangements, the kind that leave no fingerprints. At church, Bianca would wear her brightest outfits on the day she knew the visiting pastor was coming, position herself at the center of every photo, and steer Angela gently to the edge. "Stand there, Angie. The light is better." The light was never better. But Angela smiled and moved to the edge every single time. At family gatherings, when Annie's asked Bianca about her life, she answered in full color, her new job, her new bag, her suitors. When they turned to Angela, Bianca would jump in first. "Angela is still finding herself. You know how she is," said with a smile, said with love in her voice, said in a way that closed every door before Angela could even reach the handle. The boys were the worst part. Every boy Angela liked in university, and there weren't many, because she protected her heart like something fragile, somehow ended up in Bianca's orbit. Not because Bianca wanted them, not even because she pursued them, simply because she could. She collected attention the way some people collect receipts, casually, unconsciously, or so it appeared. Angela's mother saw it once, clearly, after a family naming ceremony where 3 different men had asked Bianca for her number while Angela sat alone eating jollof rice. "That girl," her mother said, voice low, eyes sharp. "She is not your friend, Angela. She is your mirror, but cracked. Everything you should have, she holds up to herself first." Angela laughed it off. She was 22. It was easier to believe the problem was her looks, her weight, her quietness, her inability to shine. So she kept walking into rooms and sitting at the edges. She kept smiling in photos she'd been pushed out of. She kept laughing at jokes made at her expense, because at least the laughter meant she was there, meant someone noticed her enough to mock her. That is what loneliness does to a person. It makes them grateful for the wrong things. And then, on a cold Tuesday morning in March, Angela's grandmother died. And everything began to change. The woman who built something from nothing. Mama Ngozi was not a woman people forgot easily. 78 years old when she died, small in body but enormous in presence, with hands that smelled permanently of shea butter and a voice that could quiet a whole compound with one word. She had built her skincare business, Ngozi Naturals, from a single pot of cream she mixed in her kitchen in 1989, selling it door to door in a papa with a baby tied to her back. By the time Angela was born, Ngozi Naturals had grown into something real, a proper factory in Agbara, retail partnerships with 3 major pharmacies in Lagos, a loyal customer base stretching across Nigeria and into Ghana and Cameroon. She had done it without a husband's money, without a degree, without a single person who believed she could. She had done it on stubbornness, early mornings, and prayers that shook the windows. Angela had always been closest to her grandmother. Every school holiday, while other children traveled to visit relatives, Angela took a bus to Mama Ngozi's house in Isale Eco and sat in that kitchen watching her work, learning recipes, learning silence, learning what it meant to build something with your own 2 hands. People will always look at what shines on the outside, Mama Ngozi told her once, stirring a pot of black soap. But the woman who knows what is inside, that woman can never be beaten. Angela had written it in her journal at 14. She hadn't fully understood it then. She understood it now. The will. The reading of the will took place in a lawyer's office in Victoria Island on a Thursday. Angela sat in a leather chair across from her mother, two aunties, and Mom Ngozi's eldest son, Uncle Emeka, who had already begun mentioning expansion plans as if the old woman's body wasn't yet cold. When the lawyer opened the envelope and began reading, the room went still. To my children, I leave the properties in Suralere and Festac to be shared equally among them. Uncle Emeka nodded, expected, reasonable. To my granddaughter, Angela Okafor, I leave full ownership and operational control of Ngozi Naturals, its brand, its assets, its factory, its accounts, and its future. The room didn't just go quiet. It collapsed. Uncle Emeka's chair scraped back. This is a mistake, he said, like a fact, not a question. Emeka Jr. has been managing that company for 3 years. Angela knows nothing about business. Angela sat very still. She had learned stillness from years of practice, from sitting at the edges of photos, from swallowing words at gatherings. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. There is no mistake, sir. Mrs. Ngozi Okoro signed this document herself in this office 8 months before her passing. It is legal and binding. Angela's mother reached across and squeezed her hand hard enough to hurt. The aunties whispered. Someone said Angela was too young, too inexperienced, too soft. Someone else said the old woman had clearly lost her mind near the end. Angela stood up. She didn't raise her voice or argue. She folded her copy of the will, put it into her bag, and said, quietly, with all 26 years of sitting at the edges of rooms packed tightly behind her words, I will be at the factory Monday morning. Anyone who wants to discuss operations can meet me there. Then she walked out. In the lift, alone, going down 15 floors, Angela pressed her hand flat against her chest. Her heart was racing. She was terrified, shaking, but underneath the fear, something else was stirring. Something that felt almost like recognition, like she was finally standing in the right room, in the center this time, not the edge. She pulled out her phone and started typing a message to Bianca. You won't believe what just happened. Bianca replied in 4 seconds. Tell me everything, babe. Angela almost sent it. Then she stopped herself, put the phone back in her bag, and pressed the lobby button. Some things, she decided, were better kept close until she knew what they were. Learning the language, she should have grown up speaking. The first 6 months were brutal. If anyone had told Angela that inheriting a company would feel like being pushed off a cliff and told to grow wings before hitting the ground, she would have believed them completely. The factory manager, Mr. Tund, 60 years old and 22 years into working for Mom Ngozi, was polite the way experienced men are polite to young women, surface level, patient, deeply unconvinced. Every question Angela asked, he answered in the tone reserved for explaining things to children. That's not how we do it here. That sentence became the sound of her first 3 months. Emeka Jr., her cousin who had been running the company before the will was read, stopped showing up entirely. He took 3 senior staff members with him, and Angela later discovered he'd attempted to walk off with their top wholesale client list too, a move she caught only because Mama Ngozi's fiercely loyal secretary, Mrs. Bello, had been documenting everything since the funeral. Your grandmother told me to watch, Mrs. Bello said simply, sliding a folder across the desk. So I watched. Angela read every page, then read it again, then stayed at the factory until midnight for 11 nights straight, learning every part of the business the way you learn a language you should have grown up speaking. She made mistakes. A packaging deal that cost more than it saved, a supplier contract misread and renegotiated from weakness, a marketing consultant who knew nothing useful. Each mistake cost money, time, confidence. But here's what nobody tells you about a woman who has spent her whole life being underestimated. She has developed a very high tolerance for starting over. Angela had been restarting her confidence since she was 12. She knew how to fall and get back up without making a performance of it, how to absorb a blow and keep moving, how to sit in the discomfort of not knowing until she understood. By month 4, she'd restructured the supply chain. By month 5, she'd hired a young chemist fresh out of the University of Benin with ideas about natural formulations that made her eyes go wide with possibility. By month 6, she launched a new product line, skincare designed specifically for deeper skin tones, for African women who'd spent decades buying European creams that didn't understand their skin. She named the line Mama's Recipe. The response wasn't immediate. It never is with things that are real. But it was steady. A beauty blogger in Abuja tried the face oil and posted a video that reached 400,000 people. A woman in Accra tagged Ngozi Naturals in a before and after that went everywhere. A lifestyle magazine in Lagos called and asked if Angela would sit for an interview. She wore a dress she'd chosen herself, deep burgundy, tailored to her actual body, full and real and present. The photographer told her to relax her face. She told him her face was already relaxed. When the magazine cover came out, Angela stood in a pharmacy in Ikeja and looked at herself on the shelf next to the lip balms, her own face, dark and direct and unapologetic, above the headline, "The granddaughter who inherited a legacy and made it her own." She stood there a full minute, not posing, just looking. She bought 3 copies. That same week, Bianca called. "I saw the magazine, Angie. You look so good. I always knew you had it in you." Angela listened to that warm, familiar voice, and something shifted in her chest. Not anger, not bitterness, just clarity. The kind that comes when you've finally seen something you can never unsee. "Thank you, Bianca," she said. And nothing else. Derek. His name was Derek Sonny, 31, a senior brand consultant, sharp dresser, the kind of man who remembered your coffee order and sent voice notes instead of texts. He had been Bianca's fiancé for 2 years, a relationship performed more than lived, full of coordinated couple photos and strategic attendance at the right events. Bianca had introduced him to everyone as "my person," the kind of language people use when they want to make love sound like an acquisition. Derek first came to Angela's office in September, representing a brand strategy firm Ngozi Naturals had considered for a product launch campaign. It was a professional meeting. He presented well. Angela asked hard questions. He answered harder ones back. They signed a 3-month consulting contract. What Angela didn't know then, what she'd only learn weeks later, was that Derek and Bianca had been quietly falling apart since April. Bianca had a habit that took years to fully reveal itself. She needed control the way some people need air. When she felt a relationship shifting, sensed the other person building something that didn't need her, she didn't fight for it openly. She dismantled it quietly. A comment here, a whisper there, a slow erosion of the other person's confidence until they were too uncertain to leave, but too empty to stay. She had done it to Angela for 26 years without Angela fully naming it. She had done it to Derek too. "She told my mother I had a gambling problem," Derek said one evening when he and Angela had stayed late reviewing campaign concepts and the conversation drifted somewhere more honest. "I found out from my sister. She'd been telling people in our circle small things, half-true things for months. By the time I noticed, I was already a different version of myself in everyone's eyes." Angela went very still. "She would build you up in private," he continued, "eye somewhere else, and undo you in public. So smoothly you never caught the moment it happened." Angela set down her pen. She knew this story. She had lived this story. She had just never had it told back to her in another person's voice with such clean precision. "I ended it in August," he said. "I didn't make a scene. I just stopped." Angela nodded slowly. She understood stopping. She'd done her own version of it. Not with one dramatic moment, but a series of quiet decisions. The text she never sent, the secret she kept to herself in the elevator, the magazine copy she never delivered to Bianca's door. She and Derek didn't become a love story that night. That isn't what this moment was. It was 2 people recognizing something true in each other, a shared grammar, a particular kind of wound healing into something stronger, and choosing to sit with it a while longer before naming it. What happened in the weeks after was slower than a romance, and more important. He brought rigor to her business instincts. She brought emotional intelligence to his strategic thinking. Together they relaunched Mama's Recipe with a campaign that became one of the most talked about skincare moments in Nigerian social media that year. Billboards went up in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. Angela's actual face, full and dark and undimmed, looking down at people walking through traffic. Bianca drove past one in Lekki on a Wednesday afternoon, alone in her car. She slowed down without meaning to, stared at Angela's face for a long time, then dialed her number. Angela let it ring. The gala. The night of the Ngozi Naturals anniversary gala was the kind of night that rewrites the way you remember your past. Held at a rooftop venue in Victoria Island. Clean white lights, long tables draped in ivory, the smell of good food and expensive perfume moving through warm Lagos air. It marked the company's 35th anniversary, and Angela had insisted it also celebrate the relaunch, the new line, the new direction. Something Mom and Ngozi would have been proud of. Something real. The guest list was Angela's, built by her choices, Stockists, brand partners, journalists, community leaders, the chemists from Benin who'd transformed their formulations, Mrs. Bello in a blue Osso oak that made her look 20 years younger. Bianca was not on the list. She came anyway. Angela saw her from across the room near the beginning of the evening, dressed beautifully as always, standing near the entrance with a specific expression of someone who'd arrived uninvited and was performing the confidence that justified it. Their eyes met. Neither moved immediately. Then Bianca walked toward her with a wide, warm, genuine-seeming smile, the kind that had disarmed Angela for 26 years. "Angie, this is stunning. Look at what you've done." She spread her arms, gesturing at the room. "I always said you had something special in you. I always told people that Angela, she's different." Angela took a real breath, deep from her chest. "You told people I was still finding myself," she said simply without heat. "At every gathering, every church event, anytime someone asked about me, you said it in front of me, Bianca. You said it like you were being kind." Bianca's smile slowed but didn't fall. "Angela, you're being, and the boys. My first boyfriend, in year 2, you told him I'd said things about him that I never said. I only understood what happened years later, when he mentioned it at a reunion. That was so long ago. And Derek." The name landed like a dropped glass. Bianca went very still. "He told me what you did to his name, to his confidence, to the way people around him saw him. I didn't need him to tell me, actually. I already knew the method. I have felt that method my whole life." Around them, the gala continued. Music, laughter, clinking glasses. Nobody was watching this particular corner of the rooftop. It was just 2 women and 26 years of unspoken truth. Bianca's expression shifted slowly, the smile dropping, something real showing beneath it, something that looked almost like shame, or perhaps only shock at being seen clearly for the first time. "I was afraid of you, Angela," she said finally, her voice smaller now, stripped of performance. "I know that's not what you expected me to say, but it's true. You had something I couldn't name and I didn't know what to do with it. So I managed me." "You managed me," Angela said. Bianca looked away. "I'm sorry, Angela." Angela looked at this woman she had loved since they were children in matching Ankara dresses and felt something loosen in her chest. Not the joy of victory, not the sweetness of revenge. Something quieter. The release that only comes when a truth that's lived in your body for decades finally finds its way out through your mouth. "I know you are," Angela said, "but sorry is the beginning of something, not the end. I can't pretend the last 26 years didn't happen. I won't." She touched Bianca once, briefly, on the arm, then turned and walked back toward her real guests, the people who'd come to celebrate something built on honesty, hard mornings, and one grandmother's unshakable faith in a quiet, watchful girl. Derek found her near the bar 5 minutes later. He said nothing, just handed her a glass of juice and stood beside her. That was enough. The freedom of no longer waiting. There is a particular freedom that comes when you stop waiting to be seen by the people who were never going to see you anyway. Angela discovered this freedom slowly, the way you discover most things that change you, not all at once, but in layers. The year after the gala was the fullest of Angela's life. Ngozi Naturals expanded. A regional distribution deal with a South African retail chain brought the brand into 7 new markets. The Mama's Recipe line won a Beauty Innovation Award at a Lagos Industry Summit, and Angela stood at the podium in a room of 500 people and delivered a speech without notes, without apology, without once shrinking herself to fit the space. She talked about her grandmother, the pot of cream in a 1989 kitchen, what it means to build something from nothing but belief and early mornings. She talked about the years of sitting at the edges of rooms, learning to see everything from there, and how that painful education had given her a precision other people spent years trying to acquire. When she finished, the room was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then it was loud. Her mother, in the 3rd row, stood before anyone else did. The magazine covers multiplied. Television interviews followed. A documentary crew from a streaming platform contacted Mrs. Bello about a feature on the Ngozi Naturals story. Angela sat with them for 2 full days and told the truth. All of it, including the uncomfortable parts, including the years she didn't believe in herself, including the grandmother who'd seen something in her she couldn't yet see in herself. The documentary aired on a Thursday. By Friday, Angela's phone had stopped being manageable. Bianca watched it alone in her Lecky flat, the light low, a glass of wine going warm on the table. She watched Angela speak with quiet certainty, watched the archive footage of Mama Ngozi, watched Derek briefly appear as a creative collaborator, and understood, with complete clarity, the full weight of the choices she'd made over 26 years. She didn't call Angela that night. She sat with what she'd watched and let it be uncomfortable. Some lessons can only be received in silence. Angela and Derek took things at their own pace, no performances, no announcements, just two people who'd chosen honesty over strategy. He moved into a role as head of brand partnerships at Ngozi Naturals 6 months later. His first major project was a campaign featuring everyday African women, real ones, full ones, dark ones, quiet ones, wearing nothing but mama's recipe skincare and the specific confidence of women who'd stopped asking permission to be seen. The billboards went up across Lagos. Angela's aunt, the one who'd once told her at 20 that she should be grateful anyone noticed her at all, called to say she'd seen the billboard near her estate and that Angela looked very professional. Angela thanked her warmly, without bitterness, because that aunt, in her limited way, was doing the best she could with what she had. And Angela was learning that carrying the weight of other people's smallness was a luxury she could no longer afford. Uncle Emeka's son, the cousin who had walked out with 3 staff members and a client list, reached out asking about roles at Ngozi Naturals. Angela thought about it for a full day, then replied, "Send your CV to HR." Not because she owed him anything, but because she had become the kind of leader who didn't let old grievances shrink her capacity for generosity. Mama Ngozi had taught her that the size of your table is a reflection of the size of your heart. Angela at last had enough room. She still drove past that pharmacy in Acadia sometimes, still saw her face on the shelf, still felt something move in her chest each time. Not pride exactly, though there was pride, but something older, something that felt like recognition, like arrival, like a door finally opening to a room she had always deserved to stand in. She was the girl nobody saw. The woman she became, nobody could look away from. And the most powerful part was that she hadn't become this woman to prove anything to anyone. She hadn't transformed herself for revenge. She hadn't built Ngozi Naturals into a name people respected in order to stand in Bianca's shadow and flip the lights. She had done it because Mama Ngozi believed, long before Angela believed it herself, that her quietest granddaughter, the watchful one, the one who sat in kitchens learning instead of running outside to be seen, was exactly the right person to carry something precious forward. She had done it because it was hers, because it was true, because you cannot outrun the person you are always meant to become. The girl who sat at the edges of every room had built her own room, her own table, her own light. And it was bright enough for everyone.